Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. So, my name is Vince. I'm a physical therapist out of Joliet. You can find me at movementthinker.org. That's my blog. I want to touch on a couple of things that became more apparent to me over the weekend. So, first, I'm reminded of a quote from Anthony DeLito. I don't know, one of the many articles that he's either authored, co authored, what have you. But this is both for patients and for therapists, because we need to be able to tell the difference, right, between these two people. One is, do you want to be a PT with 20 years of experience, or do you want to be a PT that's been practicing for 20 years with 1 year of experience repeated 20 times? This year I've taken 3 or 4 continuing education courses, and I'm going to go with conservatively 3 courses out of the 4 have spoken of this central driven mechanism of pain, not a peripheral driven mechanism of pain. What that means is pain from the brain down, not from the body up. One more time, what that means is pain that's not necessarily due to tissue damage, but a perception of pain driven from the brain because of a multitude of factors, whether that's a previous injury, emotional states, decreased blood flow to certain areas, what have you, but pain driven top down. Now, when I first entered this profession in 2007, this was unheard of, right? You didn't hear this in continuing education courses, at least not the ones that I did, maybe selective bias, what have you, but this wasn't talked about. And I recently took a McKenzie course. I don't know what it's called nowadays, but essentially continuing skills update. And this was brought up in the course that's specifically about a mechanical pain. And they touched on these central driven mechanisms. So if you're that therapist, and again, I'm still relatively fresh in this field. I mean, I'm 12 years in, compared to some of the people that I know that have been practicing for 30 and 40 years in this field. So if this field has changed that much in a matter of 12 years and you're not keeping up with it, imagine what happened if you came out in the 90s. And it's sad because I still see clinicians practicing as if it's 1990. They're speaking of tissue damage. They're speaking of damage, right? The last message that we want to give to the patient is that you're broken. But they're speaking of damage, and that may actually be causing more harm than good. Some therapists are, they have good intentions. They just don't know any better. Other therapists, I'm cynical. I'm not going to necessarily say they have good intentions by doing this, but it is what it is. It's still happening out there. And as a patient, you need to know that that's not the norm anymore, right? We're getting away from the "you're damaged" message to "let's get you moving" message, and figure out how we can get you moving and modify the movement however we need to in order to slowly progress you back to your normal life, what you want to be doing. Hey, Pam, good morning. And this applies for patients who've had surgery. This applies to patients who haven't had surgery. Our ultimate goal is to get you back to doing what you want to do. And if in the process we're instilling negative thought patterns in you that you're damaged, you should be fearful of doing things, you can't do things. I'm just shocked, right? When over the weekend, you hear patients that have been told you can't do this or you can't do that. And I'm sorry, I've trouble believing it, right? Because again, 12 years in, and that's just not the way I've really practiced in 12 years. And so I struggle to understand why it's still happening for patients. And I can understand why it happened initially is because we didn't know any better. But the fact that it's still happening is scary. So as a patient, make sure you choose the provider that gives you hope that you're going to get better and back to your normal activities, and not that, throws up the white flag and says, well, I guess you'll never be able to do that again, because that's not appropriate. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. We need to modify what you're doing. But again, the practice has changed. As much as therapists like to believe that it's changing slowly and we're not making any headway into the community, there's been a lot of changes in research and a lot of changes into what we know. And so now the onus is on the therapist, such as me, to get out there and educate the community. So if you're in the Joliet area, today I will be at Park Towers educating about balance and pain. Completely forgot that I was doing that today in my appointment with my car's in the shop, which is why I'm in the clinic so early. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to get there. I guess I'll be Ubering or Lyfting. But yeah, as a therapist, if you're watching this, get out there and educate the community because they don't know what we know. Many PTs, like you just heard, if you're keeping up with the research, many PTs don't know what you know. So get out there and educate, and you guys have a great Monday.